Hello, everyone, and welcome to our ePortfolio workshop with Dr. Brenda Refaei and Dr. Ruth Benander. My name is Abigail Blakely, and I'm a higher ed product marketing manager at 𝐒𝐭𝐮𝐤𝐞, and I'm thrilled to be here with you today. As we begin, I want to encourage you to use the chat feature. You'll find it on the right side of your screen. This is where you can submit any questions you have for our speakers. We will also be having a Q&A session at the end. And if you'd like to say where you're chiming in from, or maybe who can be the furthest away from 𝐤𝐭𝐻Q, I know we have some international attendees today, so that might be pretty easy to win. But comment in where you're coming from, and yeah, warm up the chat a little bit. As a friendly reminder, please be respectful and polite when commenting. Also, on the right-hand side of your screen is where you can respond to polls. We have several that will pop up throughout the event provided by our presenters today, and would love to have your participation. We'll also be sharing lots of resources for you, and in case you miss any of them, you'll have access to this page after the event, and that just popped up on your screen. If you encounter any technical difficulties today, like audio-visual lag, or you can't hear anything for some reason during the event, be sure to try refreshing or exiting and re-entering the event, and you should be good to go. If you have to leave for whatever reason, this event is being recorded and will be provided to you after the event, along with access to all these resources. I know we have a lot of people new to 𝐒𝐭𝐮 here, so I'm going to give just a brief introduction. Over the last decade, 𝐒𝐭𝐮 has developed more than 30 courseware and simulations for marketing, business, communication, and now accounting students. I was really excited to put on today's ePortfolio event with Brenda and Ruth because our mission is to help you help your students help the world. Besides the events like today, we do that by developing robust, first-in-the-world resources that reduce your preparation time and bring high-quality educational experiences into your classroom. I wanted to give you all a break from listening for me real quick, so here is a quick video on 𝐶IMternships.
This is 𝐒𝐭𝐮. We develop digital courseware and simulated internships, or as we like to call them, 𝐶IMternships. Our resources make the business of learning easier and more engaging, helping educators help students help the world. Here's how we can help you. A 𝐒𝐭𝐮 𝐶IMternship mimics a real-world workspace for a semester. It asks students to perform the same tasks their supervisor would assign them on day one of an entry-level job and beyond. A 𝐶IMternship isn't learning gamified. It's an internship redefined. 𝐶IMternships turn conceptual knowledge into demonstrable skills, helping students build impressive resumes before they graduate. Plus, they're fun. We pair our 𝐶IMternships with powerful courseware, packing hundreds of great resources for educators with an engaging, accessible text for students. Best of all, you can say goodbye to your dusty, out-of-date textbooks. We update our courseware annually, which means you can rest assured that your course will always be current with your industry. At 𝐒𝐭𝐮, we're here to help you teach more easily and learn more effectively. Visit us online and see how easy it is to stay current with 𝐒𝐭𝐮.
All right. I see some people that weren't able to see the video in the chat. I'm sorry about that. Maybe it was screen size or something like that. But we should be able to share a link to that video with you in a little bit, just in case you'd like to go back and watch it because you missed it. But our goal is to equip students with skills they can list on their resumes, portfolios, and even speak to in job interviews. So if you are using a simulation in your course, we hope today's presentation gives you some inspiration about where your students can include their sim experiences. And if you're not using a simulation, don't worry, all of today's content will apply to your course. Now, I'm happy to introduce you to our presenters today. Dr. Brenda Refaei is co-director of the Learning and Teaching Center and a professor of English at the University of Cincinnati Blue Ash College, where she teaches developmental, first, and intermediate English composition. Dr. Refaei is an Engaging in Excellence and Equity Fellow and the co-author of Equity and Inclusion in Higher Education, Strategies for Teaching. Dr. Ruth Benander is a professor in the Department of English and Communication, also at UC Blue Ash College. She teaches composition and is the general editor of the Journal for Research and Practice in College Teaching. Dr. Benander also currently serves in the Learning and Teaching Center as an instructional designer. Thank you so much, ladies, for sharing your expertise with us today. I'll go ahead and jump off screen so you can take it away.
Thank you so much. Brenda, if you could pop the link to the sample portfolios into the chat, that would be great. Along with the caveat that I will give to that is that we're currently updating this page. So many of the portfolios are available, but some of them may not be. So we are working on updating that page. Thank you so much for joining us today to talk about ePortfolios. Brenda and I are very excited to talk to you about it because we find this to be a fulfilling way to help students integrate their experience in their classroom, for you to enjoy that integration, to see the progress of their learning, and also as a way to give more holistic and personal assessment to student work. So the first thing we'd like to do before we begin to get into the details of ePortfolios, I'd like to find out a little bit more, or we would like to find out a little bit more about what you already know about ePortfolios. You'll see a poll in the chat area, and just we're looking for your familiarity. ePortfolios first came out, or first began to be written about in 1994 in an article by Helen Barrett titled Technology Supported Portfolio Assessment. Portfolio assessment is also used in the Erasmus program, also in many programs in the United States, but not as many as we think could be using them. They can be used at a program level, and they can also be used at the classroom level. As we're looking at the questions coming in on the on our poll, it looks like, wow, we're pretty evenly across that. A lot of you are already using them, and some people have thought about trying them, and we would like to help you join the group of I use them. And those of you who are checking in by saying you've heard about them, we would like to help you know more about them, because sometimes there's a hesitation to use another new thing, because there are so many new things. But we'd like to convince you today that this is a new thing worth trying. And if you're already using them, yay! We'd like to give you more resources, and we'd also like to have you go like this. Give yourself a pat on the back. You are doing your students a big favor. And Brenda, could you talk about the types of ePortfolios?
Yes, Ruth, thank you. So when we're thinking about an ePortfolio, we're thinking of a digital display of what our students have done in some form. And so 3 basic ways that a student can put a portfolio together is to produce a showcase portfolio. And in a showcase, they're presenting their best work, possibly to a potential employer, or possibly at the end of a program to showcase what they've learned throughout their program or course of study. It is a very highly specified kind of demonstration of their learning. In the learning portfolio, students are working towards that integration of knowledge that Ruth mentioned earlier. And in that one, students will document all the steps of their process and explain how they got to their final product. And then in the final assessment one, this is one that programs and departments might use to assess student learning of course outcomes or programmatic outcomes. And so oftentimes it's a more static picture of what students are able to do. So an ePortfolio varies according to its purpose. So if it's a showcase, it has a different look and feel than if it's a learning portfolio, which may be a little messier. And in the final assessment one, because of that purpose, it may be a more static kind of portfolio. So all of these work well together to help our students to demonstrate their knowledge to various audiences. So why use an ePortfolio? It makes the progress that our students are making towards learning course outcomes or program outcomes clear to the instructor, but also clear to the student. Students are able to watch their progress throughout a period of time, whether that's in one semester or one term, or over the course of their entire program of study. It facilitates personal reflection on the progress. So the difference between just putting together a portfolio of their work and ePortfolios as we're thinking of them is the piece of reflection which helps students to connect the learning that they do in different parts of the course and within different courses within their program of study and with their co-curricular work. So reflection ties everything together, helps students to integrate their knowledge. And then it presents student work in a personalized environment, which gives them ownership of their own learning, which is different than if we just ask our students to put together a series of assignments with no connection between them. ePortfolio really helps our students to see how they have the ownership of what they're doing within our courses and within our programs of study. So, Ruth, would you like to talk about how would you like to use portfolios?
Yes. I think an important part on this particular slide that we would like to mention is that the AAC&U has declared in their publications that this is a high impact practice. What is really wonderful about this is that it kind of supports what you already know, and what we're asserting is that this is a threshold concept almost in understanding the process of learning, so that students can be able to see their progress, and they're able, through the practice of reflection, to understand their progress. And we know in the literature surrounding transfer of knowledge, the more we can get students to think about their learning, the better chance they have is to remember that learning when they get to the next step in their education. And we like transfer of learning. It's hard to do, and we think that ePortfolios can help transfer of learning. So, how would you like to use ePortfolios? Here's a poll turning up on the right-hand side, because we've talked about the kinds of ePortfolios and we've talked about the impact of these portfolios. How would you like to be doing this? This is a single choice poll, and this so you can choose all three for your multiple choice, which is very nice to add in. But we've talked about documenting learning, assessing their learning, showcasing their learning, but there are so many other ways also to use it, we realize. So this is kind of a microcosm of how ePortfolios can be used, because really the process of creating the ePortfolio, the process of getting our students to reflect, are all highly valuable parts of making the learning process work, especially in the fragmented education that our students have now, where you take your English class by itself, your biology class is separated from everything else, and then you take your business class and it has nothing to do with any of the other 4 subjects or 5 or 6 subjects that students may be looking at. So an ePortfolio does a really nice way of maybe linking these 3 together. And when we look at people responding to this poll, all 3 seems to be a popular answer. Documenting student learning. If you were in the previous poll where you were saying I'm thinking about using ePortfolios, then documenting learning might be a great place to start, because it's a way to ease in. You're not showing it to anybody else. And once you've collected them all, and you might look at them and suddenly realize, oh my gosh, I've documented their learning. And in that documentation, you have assessed it. If you share those links in a place in your learning management system or on your class website, however you choose to have technology interfacing with your course, if you showcase it there, students can see what each other are doing. And that way students have more connection to their interaction in the course. If you're using all three, yay. But what I'd like to point out is that if you start with the easiest one, documenting student learning, the process of an ePortfolio leads you so easily into the other three. So using an ePortfolio, we trust that process. So I want to talk about how and where ePortfolios can exist, because often this is a really challenging element of creating an ePortfolio. What Brenda and I have found in our research is the largest bottleneck, the largest impediment to beginning to use an ePortfolio or even continuing is the technology. And in this challenging time, what we've found is our budgets are shrinking as we try to gather everyone back into the educational fold after our entertainment of 2020. So when we think about where ePortfolios are built, we can think about websites, various free websites that can host an ePortfolio. Within your learning management system, there are ePortfolio builders and there are specific ePortfolio sites. So these three different ways to realize your ePortfolio can be can affect how you use the portfolio. If you're a chatter, if you could pop into the chat, if you're already using ePortfolios, the 46% of you who are doing that, if you could pop into the chat what platform you're using. And then we can talk a little bit about that distribution. So when we're thinking about just the websites for hosting pages, oftentimes that'll be a free site. And I see Wix is coming up. Holy cow, Amanda, you're using the Canvas ePortfolio? Oh my gosh, we'll talk about that in a second. Wix and WordPress are big ones out there. Ooh, Portfolium. Ooh, that's a tasty one. And I love the various realization. Oh, more Canvas ePortfolio users. Oh, Wix, WordPress, and Google Sites. Woo! Those are the ones that are loved. Featured sections in LinkedIn. Yes, some people are also using Evernote as a free place to put in their ePortfolios. Canvas and WordPress. Oh, Bradley, how do you decide between those two? Those are two different planets of ePortfolio. Canva. Oh, yes. Canva, not Canvas, the LMS, but Canva, the design program, is another place where you can create them. Canva also functions for many other things. And if you're building your ePortfolio in Wix or Google Sites, then you can build graphics in Canva that can be very easily inserted into what you're using. One of the things that's very interesting to talk about in terms of the learning management systems is that none of the learning management systems are actually built with ePortfolios in mind. So blessings on all of you who are using the Canvas with an S, the LMS, Instructure Canvas. It can be a little challenging, and there's a real steep learning curve on that one. And we'll talk more about the learning curves on the other ones as they appear. So I want to talk specifically about some of these. Oh, GitHub. Oh, who's that? Who's using GitHub? GitHub is, oh, Brenda, so you're using GitHub. Fascinating. That's a very creative use of GitHub. Canva also has standalone free web pages now. Yes. So Canva is moving into this territory. So on our, let's see if we have our list. Yes. So here's our list of various places. Portfolium is also a vendor, I believe. Is that correct? Those of you using Portfolium, that's a vendor that your school purchased. So there are a lot of people getting in on this this production. But when we're taking a look at, bye Cheryl, when we're taking a look at the various things that you can use, I want to talk about the vendor versions versus the free versions. So the vendor versions, you're going to have to get your department or your university to purchase them. So with that money involved, you need to have, you probably may be thinking about a program-wide portfolio system, so that, and you, if you're paying for it, you may also need to be requiring people to be using it. So there are all kinds of social relationships that come with getting a vendor for your portfolio. So you have to be really committed to this. And generally it's program assessment, not classroom assessment, that is driving the purchasing of a vendor. So if you're thinking of the free sites, this might be where you're slowly easing into ePortfolios, or you're going to use it and other people in your department or unit may not be using it. And so when we think about the free sites, you need something that's going to be really easy to use. The PebblePad, Dream, Folio Spaces, Folio Tech, Eventbrite, Portfolium, all of these have support for using the platform. The free sites do not. So when we're thinking about using the free sites, you're kind of on your own, unless you have someone in your department who's going to be able to support you in using these sites. So of the three, WordPress has become more complex, but it's very beautiful. So those of you using WordPress, I'm interested if you could pop something in there about how you support the faculty and students who are using the WordPress. Jason asks, do the paid ones leave something for students to continue to host and update after graduation? Thank you, Jason, for asking the winning question. Indeed, with a subscription, sometimes students are able to maintain their vendor site after graduation. So one of the challenges of using a vendor site is you can lock it up and you can control it. That's why it's good for program assessment, because you can lock a snapshot of the site so the student can't continue to change it. The problem then is when you graduate, if you pay for subscriptions over time, or where the university continue to pay the subscription. For the free sites, the student owns the site, not the university. If it's an vendor site, the university owns it. Wix has a great support site. Google Sites has a marvelous help site also, which is lovely. Wix is a little more complicated to use than Google Sites. Of the ranking of easy to learn, I think I would go WordPress, most challenging, Wix, reasonably challenging, but it's because they're beautiful. You can make lovely portfolios on those, but it does take a certain amount of effort. Weebly is a little easier. For a while, so Weebly is a little easier to use, and Google Sites, you can have your website built in about 30 seconds, and it's really easy to do. So if you're just easing in to ePortfolios, start with Google Sites. But if you have some experience with it, you might mess around with Wix and WordPress. Christy's saying Weebly's very easy for her students because of the drop-in features and the block organizing for structure for pages. Yes, Weebly and Google Sites are really accessible because they do have these easy functions to get into. For the free sites, it's generally online support. It's hard to, if you're going to require people in your program to use a specific site, then it's important to have someone in your unit or department who is available to be supporting that. Let's see. All right, so that's our work in the chat. And so, Brenda, if you could talk about some sample ePortfolios.
Sure. I just want to go back to a question that Jason asked earlier about reflections. And are we concerned about them having showcase-worthy reflections? And yes, that is a concern if they're going to show them to a high-stakes audience, such as a potential employer. We would want them to really be involved in reviewing, revising with their instructor or with a tutor in some way their reflections to make sure that they're appropriately written for the audience that they're going to be showcasing that material for. So there's a link in the PowerPoint, but I'm going to share my screen to show you a website that we have for our faculty, staff, and students at our university, where we try to provide support for our faculty who are beginning to work with ePortfolios, and then also for our students. So we have a student ePortfolio handbook, and then we also have a faculty staff handbook. And then what we also have on here are some sample student portfolios. Because of the past couple of years of other things happening, we have not been able to update our student portfolios, but we do have some good ones to show you here. So I'm going to show you Austin's portfolio. This is a programmatic ePortfolio, which means it's a bachelor's program that he's part of, and it documents all of his learning throughout the course. So it is somewhat of a showcase and final assessment portfolio. If he were to take this portfolio to share with an employer, he would need to scale back all of these tabs to highlight the 2 to 3 things that he believes that the employer would be most interested in. In our research in interviewing employers, they were overwhelmed when there was too much information. They really did like the bulleted lists of information, and then also having it prominently displayed in the materials such as the CV or the cover letter or resume, so that they could find the links easily. This would be something that they would be looking at maybe in their second round of review. So this is a good idea of what a final programmatic portfolio might look like. Then to show you a different type of portfolio, this is one which is a program of English courses. So you can see here that this is the Students English 1001 and then the English 2089. So we have a 2-course program of English here at the University of Cincinnati. And so this portfolio would give us a good look into our English program and how our students doing in the English program. And both of these were created on WordPress. The third one I'm going to show you was created on Google Sites. And this one is just to show you the ease that can be done with a Google Sites portfolio. You can see that this student is a first-year student, able to create the home page and an About Me page, able to document all of the learning in the course throughout all of the projects. So ending with a final reflection so that they can document what they've learned in this course over the semester. So are there questions about the portfolios before we move forward from those samples? Anything that you'd like to ask about what the sample portfolios look like or how they may be different from what you're seeing?
Particularly those of you using the LMS-based, the LMS-based ePortfolio systems. Greg says, what are the 3 things? What 3 things? Critical to add to a showcase for the employers.
Yes, okay. I would say that you definitely want to think, if you're a student or you're guiding a student, to look at the job description that they are looking at, that what would be the samples of student work that that employer would want to see. So for instance, in accounting, maybe there are particular accounting activities that they would want to document to show how they're able to do that activity. So job description, sample work, and yes, exactly. Thank you, Ruth. No, we don't have any of those job interview focused ePortfolios, but that is a great one to look for. Exciting accounting documents, yes. Well, I think there are exciting accounting documents out there, but
the third thing, I'm trying to remember what the third thing was for an employer portfolio, and I think it was personal service in the community. Was that it?
I'm finding it difficult to remember. I think that they were looking for the ease of going through the portfolio. So ease of navigating the portfolio,
right. Ease of navigation,
making sure that
right.
the information that they were looking for would be easy to find. So clearly labeling the different samples that the students provide, why they're there. So the explanation or rationale, how does it help the employer to understand what the student is able to do? So yeah, the specific skills documented in the portfolio, explanation or navigation, and then that first one, the job description that and how it's connected to sample work.
For Tammy, who is looking for senior seminar building ePortfolios for the job search, I think if you, there are a lot of engineering schools who are creating ePortfolios to support students in getting their engineering employment. And so you might look into, if you Google ePortfolios for engineering resumes or something like that, I think you may be able to find them there. But we don't have any specific ones here. But Greg, yes, there are exciting accounting documents because we know that accountants are among the most important people in law enforcement. Let's see. UMass Engineering career-centered ePortfolios. Oh, that's a good search term.
Thank you, Karen. This echoes what we found with our interview with employers. The clear, concise points, relevant, customized, visually interesting examples, and skills demonstration. One other thing that we found with our employers was that there seemed to be like a age perspective to it too. So some of the people who had been an employer and in hiring processes longer seemed less interested in looking at portfolios, but younger people who are in the hiring HR departments seem to be more interested in looking at these skills that students are able to bring with them to the workplace. So I think it is going to require maybe a cultural shift in some areas, but in others, they're already well underway. Yes, definitely. Sometimes a larger font, these bifocals are not my friend today.
All right. So perhaps we might take a look at, just really quickly, as we've been talking about the facility of creating these ePortfolios, would your students be able to create ePortfolios like the ones we shared? This is a, and thinking different classes have different facility with this kind of thing. So it's interesting to think about the complexity of a particular class. I know my first year classes have a very different orientation to creating ePortfolios than my second year classes or the faculty portfolios that we talk about. So in general, we have a we're having a preference for yes with some support, yes, no problem. Perhaps those are older, more experienced students, and no, I don't think so. And in the no, I don't think so area, this is where it's important for the instructor to play with Google Sites. And then once you've messed with Google Sites for a little bit, then it becomes easier to introduce to a class. But it is true that students have a really hard time creating an ePortfolio with an instructor who does not feel really confident about the technology. So this becomes an important aspect of what we're looking at. Yes, with some support. And so we'd like to talk a little bit about the nature of that support on how to implement these ePortfolios. So when we're thinking about planning and facilitating the ePortfolios in class, this is where we think about the yes with some support. This semester, I have 2 classes. One is in-person first year, and one is asynchronous online second year. In my in-person first year course, where there's a wide range of students in this class, anywhere from 16 from our advanced high school placement,
College Credit
proper name,
Plus.
whose name? The College Credit Plus group. And then we also have people who are returning to school. So I have 32-year-old people who have just gotten out of the military and they're restarting. So with this wide band of experience, I do take class time to work to create that initial portfolio. We use Google Sites for the ease of first-year students. Some of our high school students already have experience with Google Sites because they come from Google Classrooms. These students, we take the first semester, in the second week of class, we talk about creating our ePortfolio, making the shell. We're putting all of the assignments in so they can just be pasting them in at another time. And with using that class time, they're able to see that it's not so hard to do. And we can also give the support that they need while we're creating them. For my online asynchronous second year students, I make a video of me creating the site, and they have all been able to make their sites. But what is really important is if you're teaching online and you're creating a video to help students be able to create an ePortfolio for their online course, it's really important, I think, to have it in your voice on the ePortfolio that you're asking them to make, rather than using somebody else's or referring them to the Google information. Because when it's in your voice and when it's tailored to what you expect to have in it, you have a much higher probability of success in getting good portfolios. Brenda has a slightly different approach to the in-class process. Yeah. Brenda, could you talk about your successful way of getting people to put stuff in their portfolios?
So, as Ruth mentioned, I do spend a lot of time with first-year students in the classroom, planning and facilitating what they're going to do with the ePortfolio. So I will share with them a previous student's ePortfolio so they have an idea of what we're creating. And then I spend some time explaining how it will help them to track their own learning within the course. And if they continue it, I try to encourage them to continue their portfolios into future English courses or into other courses that contain portfolios. So we do spend some time in the class, as Ruth suggested, working through how do you create the portfolio, and then how do you document your work within the portfolio, and then helping them to see how to connect information within the portfolio. So in addition to that, our second bullet point here is we create a demonstration portfolio. So sometimes we create that while we're creating the video. So here's the portfolio I'm creating that you're going to be creating for yourself. But oftentimes it is a portfolio where we provide them with the instructions of the assignments and the rationale for assignments in the portfolio so they can go back to use it as a resource within the class as well. And then a very important thing to do on your learning management system is to provide a list of all of the students' ePortfolios within the course so that they can see each other's work easily to get ideas. So I do like my students to work in teams and to review each other's portfolios so that they see a variety of approaches to the portfolio. And then also they can troubleshoot. So I ask at each table or at each group to be the tech leader in the ePortfolio so that they provide support for each other. And I find that that works really well with my students. It also helps me to stop bouncing around like a ping pong ball when they're having some kind of technical issue. Somebody at the table usually knows how to fix the issue. When they don't, then I can come over and provide that support. But I'm pretty much I like Google Sites, I'll be honest, just because I've used it for a number of years, so I'm very familiar with that one. But In my intermediate course, I do allow students to choose their platform. I saw that that's an option that many people provide because I do want my students to feel comfortable in creating their portfolio in a way that is true to their discipline and true to their own individual taste.
And Pratibha brings up an excellent point about how do you submit your portfolio through your LMS. And what is really lovely is that our university is currently in exam week. And I ask my students, I create an assignment. We use Canvas, but this can work in any LMS. I create an assignment that says ePortfolio link or ePortfolio reflection. And within whatever site they're in, they can take the URL of the published page of their ePortfolio that they would like me to be, or that I would like to be reviewing for their assessment in the class, and they submit that through the LMS. In Canvas, you have the option to say submit URL. So they just put their URL in there. Who's loving Canvas? I am, because what it does is it shows the page. So I don't even have to go to their ePortfolio because it's already shown there in the screen. The other thing that I love about this is that I can say on the due date in class, okay, we've been working on this. I'd like you to put your reflection in the ePortfolio. Everybody submit the URL. Yeah, it's like submitting a YouTube link. Yeah. And so everybody puts their URL in and they've all submitted their assignment on time in the LMS. Yay. And then I say, full disclosure, I'm not grading these right now at this very minute. So if you wanted to do some further revision on your ePortfolio site, when I grade this tomorrow, you can go ahead and update that because I will see any updates that they put on it. So this is using that ability of the student to change their ePortfolio to my advantage. And I have been, it has worked out extraordinarily well. For students who are a little unsure, we can say, here, let's do you lose stuff all the time, young person? Well, why don't you compose your stuff in your ePortfolio? And in general, that has been a useful thing. Christy's saying that they use Blackboard and they are able to submit the URL in a discussion board. Yes, that's also a great idea. And then you use the LMS rubrics on that. Blackboard doesn't have a URL submission option. What Blackboard does have is the text submission. And so if you have them submit text, all they do is paste the link into the text box, and then you'll be able to use that link to go there. It's a little less convenient. I don't think it doesn't show the web page that they've submitted, but they can submit it that way. I like in Canvas that I can have them submit the URL because then I have the grade box there for it. But if it goes into a graded discussion board, then you can also give the points there as well. And in the discussion board, they can see each other's work, which is the other thing that we want to mention is that they should see each other's work. There should be a community of creation. And so if you can put it in a discussion board so they can click on everybody's stuff, or you can create a page within your LMS that is called Class ePortfolio Links, and then students can click through for that. Also great for peer review. Jason says in D2L Brightspace, they can send a Word doc, but the discussion board idea is awesome. Oh, Jason, I totally support the discussion board option because the Word document can sometimes be a little clicky to get somewhere. They can post a link in the Word doc. Yeah, it's nicer if they can just submit the link. But if all you have is the Word doc, yay, do it that way. Brenda, would you like to talk? Whoa, so sorry, you're already there.
Sorry, we're just kind of going. Okay.
Click.
So the reason we really like ePortfolios is it does, as Ruth suggests, emphasize our students' agency and their own learning, and then learning within context. So it empowers our students to make choices about what they're going to demonstrate about their learning in the course or program. So they pick the artifacts that they want to display, and then they discuss why those artifacts are an important indicator of what they've learned in a course. And then it showcases their capabilities as creative, thoughtful learners. So our students often come to us as first-year students, unsure of their abilities. and ePortfolios help them to shine. They can tinker with things throughout the portfolio that showcase who they are as individuals, that help us to boost their confidence as writers and then also as college students. And then ePortfolios present opportunities for us to have our students engage in interaction with others in creating their projects. So it gives our students the opportunity to talk to each other about what they're working on within the course and how they're going to demonstrate that knowledge through the ePortfolio. So these are the reasons we really have grabbed onto the idea of using ePortfolios and have gone throughout our college to ask our colleagues to consider adopting them. And we've had success with very different programs like our this baccalaureate degree, that's a completion degree. And then we also have had success with our first year experience courses in chemistry and biology. So ePortfolios work really well across the curricula. Ruth, would you like to talk about, this is the greatest concern that we might have about implementing ePortfolios.
And so while you're voting for that, I'd like to address Greg's question of how do we feel about grading versus just a completion grade. And it absolutely depends on the purpose of the ePortfolio. So for example, I would do process grading in my class. So individual pieces will get an assessment as we move through. If I'm doing a B contract, then if it meets the requirements of the B contract, then that's what a good portfolio can demonstrate, meeting the requirements of a B contract. I can grade all the stuff within the portfolio and they can get a grade from that, or the whole portfolio can get a grade as well. So it depends on how you're approaching assessment within your own class, how you would choose to do that. So when we look at the greatest concern in implementing ePortfolios, we definitely see technology pulling out in front of everybody else. And that is how it is. Absolutely. The technology in general for change is a significant barrier because our software now is changing every 3 months. So sometimes it can be difficult to keep up with all the various changes you have to do. If you are concerned about finding the time to learn the technology, if you have a half an hour of your scheduled time, and Microsoft Outlook will help you find that time. If you pop into sites.google.com, you will learn that technology in half an hour. Let us reassure you of that. Here, this is me helping you out. I'm giving you the big hug of technology. You can do Google Sites. If you've been using Google Sites and you're tired of it, you can go into Wix or WordPress. Might take you more than half an hour, which is fine. Weebly, you might be able to do that in half an hour also. Convincing students of its benefits. That's being consistent in class and making sure that every week something is being put into that portfolio. That's a great way to do that. Finding time in the curriculum. It can be if at the end of every class they're submitting if they're doing the work in the portfolio, then you don't have to worry about finding extra time because the work of the curriculum is being put into the portfolio. Assisting students with the technology can be, is definitely a challenge, and it depends on how much facility they absolutely have with that. Also looking at protecting student privacy can be fairly serious. Sometimes there is a student who should not be, who really doesn't want their stuff out there, which is fine. You can lock it all down. That the student privacy is also a great argument for universities purchasing a vendor. So when we're thinking about all of these various problems, definitely the process and the technology of one more thing to learn is going to be a serious problem. And that comes along with time. The ownership is another issue. Who owns it? Does the university own it? Can they get to it after graduation or not? That can also be a serious consideration. The public nature of freeware is also a concern. So when you create a Google site, you definitely want to click on that. Do not allow this to be searched by search engines. The snapshot and continual editing is an issue of student agency, but in our understanding of student creation, we accept that. And what I'll do is when I'm assessing a page in a portfolio, I will say the date on which I assessed it. And you can always go back and find that. Sharing with potential employers is something to consider when you are actually creating it. Brenda says, my concern wasn't listed. I'm concerned about protecting corporate privacy when completing real world assignments. Yes, HIPAA and FERPA are very serious. Engineering, when students go to do internships with engineering, they have to be very general because you can't share that privacy stuff. And that's a conversation to have with the students while they're making their employer ePortfolios, to say, these are the professional concerns, and you want to be able to edit and generalize appropriately. So you need to be careful, absolutely, as Brenda points out, that if you have sensitive artifacts, then you want to be able to think about how a student can communicate the skills that they've learned in a way that respects proprietary information.
Yes, that is a concern that we have often with our students. I have students in nursing programs, and I am constantly reminding them, do not give me real patient information. Do not need that in this portfolio. So what kinds of support would you like to have if you were going to implement ePortfolios?
And we're watching as they come in, and it looks like learning more about how to assess student portfolios. And if you, somebody asked earlier about rubrics, and if you Google, a lot of people are very free with how they choose to share their rubrics. So there are a lot of rubrics out there that you can take a look at. But it's also interesting to really think about what are the learning outcomes of your course? And if you start from that, if you do that reverse design idea that here are the learning outcomes in my course, how can I create an ePortfolio that will demonstrate the student's facility in being able to evidence these outcomes? So if you're really not sure about what you want in your rubric, list your create a rubric with your learning outcomes for the course, and that will be a great guide for you. Learning the technology to implement the ePortfolios, this is a serious thing, and there is a lot of help out there, and you may have colleagues who know how to use some of these things. So it's always nice to have someone to help out. Remember that when you're learning new technology, you're not alone. And if you ask someone for help, if you have a learning and teaching center or a teaching and learning center or a faculty development center, I'll bet there's someone there who could help you. If you have an instructional designer, that person could help you, but not everybody has an instructional designer. So ask your friends. I'll bet there are some informal instructional designers that are nearby that can help you out. So that's learning the technology of the ePortfolio. Now, learning how to teach with ePortfolios is yet a whole other issue. And we would love to give a workshop on that, because that is a complicated idea. But the field guide to ePortfolio, which is just turned up, is in your in the further resources, is really great. A step-by-step walkthrough in creating an ePortfolio would be my favorite way to support you in that. So Brenda, do you want to talk about
so some other resources you might find helpful
final issues?
Would be this book, High Impact ePortfolio Practice. Really a very helpful book on how to teach with ePortfolios. For those of you who are interested in assessment, this article by Diane Kelly-Riley is a good article on some frameworks for ePortfolio assessment. If you're interested in that idea of community and support through ePortfolio, the article by Deborah Hoven, and then Tilsa Thibodeau has a great article on how to help ePortfolios continue in your classroom or in your program. And so we'd like to thank you for joining us today. We're open to any questions you may have.
So if you're worried about copyright on your website, you can get a Creative Commons site. I put the link in the chat. Link to the slides. That would be Abigail. In Canvas, can students keep adding one ePortfolio and taking multiple courses as they go through a program? Yes, absolutely. I'm going to say in my use of ePortfolio platforms, the Canvas platform feels really challenging. And the more challenging the technology is, the harder it is to get student buy-in. Bradley says, what's the percentage of this current usage of ePortfolios? It's growing. It should be more. It's growing more in community colleges and two-year colleges than it is in four-year, but four-year private is growing much more quickly than that. Yes, certainly. I think you can share the link. Yes.
Yes, and I'll be sure to have these slides on the page that's also housing the recording of this event so that you can access it again. You can share it with your coworkers as well if you'd like to. Yeah, that will be sent out afterwards for everyone who was registered today. Thank you, ladies, so much. Do we have any other questions in the chat? Anything else that you'd like to know about assessment? I know that was one that was frequently chosen in the poll. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. If you liked today's event, be sure to join us again next week. We have our Spring Student Digital Summit, and it's going to be covering mostly soft skills, but skills for student success in the long run. So we hope you guys will join us then. And then we also have ProfCon that is this summer. It's our professor conference that we put on every year. We are back in person, and so it's going to be really exciting visiting Jackson Hole and Yellowstone with all the attendees. So if you'd like one more conference to go to this summer, be sure to join us. It's a really great time. Thank you all again for joining us today. Thank you, Brenda and Ruth, for sharing your time and your expertise with us. We will be sending out a certificate of attendance to everyone who joined us today so that you can use that in your own professional development purposes. And thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for letting us come and talk about ePortfolios. Go ePortfolio.